Okay, so we've talked about how you can be on this quest and you know that you want to get to this new state of being or this new physical object or this country. You're on your quest. And I had my quest, and you are probably beginning yours because you now have your intention about where you're going, where you're headed. And I told you that I was laying on that Mojave boulder, and it was it was super cold. It was magma that was like millions of years old, and it erupted through the earth millions of years ago from lava, and then it cooled, and that's how all that those boulders got out in the Mojave. I researched it because they're so beautiful to me, and they've always spoken to me. I grew up on a farm, and I really am very attenuated to the elements, to the trees and animals and the weather and everything. And out in California, the mountains. And so I was laying there, and all of a sudden, this like rush of energy was in my head. And I opened my eyes, and I saw the most horrible scene that I possibly could have seen. And it wasn't just the content, it was that somehow what I saw was contextualized immediately by my subconscious meeting my conscious energy. The energy that he had rushed through my body, through his body, had allowed me to gain access to a part of my suppressed life, what in psychotherapy they would call episodic memory. So it came full blast out. And this was in the 80s, before there were a lot of studies around trauma and sexual abuse with kids. And they, if he'd known more, maybe he wouldn't have done that. But I truly believe he was trying to help. It was just so misguided. However, my call was present in that terribly traumatic incident. Without that, I don't know how I would have gotten beyond all that incongruence that I was tamping down so forcefully, and that was making me ill. It was finally starting to really affect my career, my life, my relationships, everything. So I saw this scene play out in front of me, and I didn't want to see the identity of the person. There was a geometric shape, and when you start studying alchemy, you start understanding that the geometric shapes, like pyramids and that sort of thing, because of the way they're settled on the earth and in their relationship to the earth, they have different levels of energy and power, like numbers do. If you have 2 apples, they weigh more than 1 apple. It's just numbers, and geometrics are just a part of the physical world. So this geometric shape was present, and then this person was coming around this geometric shape, and I started screaming because I didn't want to know what I was being shown, and I wanted to stuff it down and back as fast and as hard as I could. And the man, the yogi, jumped up, and he was standing on the opposite end of the boulder now, just like, I don't know, he seemed like he was shaking. He was terrified. And what happened is sort of an animalistic part of me got released through this energy. It was classic Kundalini. And I started feeling like I was going to lose my mind. There was such a schism between what had actually happened in my childhood and what I had remembered. And the schism was so great that I was pushing it back so hard that this energy had to come up, and it was just coming out through, these big, it was like a roar. I felt like I was a lion. And this roaring came out, and then I started, ironically, doing yoga. And the yogic poses were grounding me so that I could stay on the planet. It felt like part of me, gosh, I'm realizing this just right now, I was actually integrating a soul part, a part that had left. And as that part came back in, I had to fight with everything I had to contain it in my body because it had been expelled so forcefully. All this to say, the call was right there in front of me. It was not pleasant. That happens a lot when you look at, what is the title of that children's book? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, something like that. They get in that closet, but when they get into their new space, into the new land, they there's like a big disruption, like a big sound. I forgot how it goes, but there's a big disruption in many, many stories and fairy tales. You'll see that once the person has been propelled into the call, then it's not like you have control over what happens next, because it relies on two forces colliding: the consciousness and subconsciousness, heaven and earth, good and bad, black and white. The dual universe explodes together for a moment. So what I got from that was a realization. It wasn't a realization that I wanted. It wasn't a realization that I did much with for a long time, for like a decade, because I couldn't deal with that being my life, with that being the truth of who I was. And it was shifting my identity in a way I did not like. So I tried to hang on to my life. I did act more, and then I got into art school. I went to an incredible art school. I started making art from this trauma, and that really shifted things, because I was controlling my own narrative. Instead of acting out other people's ideas and stories, I started making my own stories and making art around that. So I started gaining an awareness ephemerally through being very kinesthetic, using my hands and making things, creating things, and then showing them to people. So that is what the call can do. And I, of course, am not meaning to disrupt your own desire, but I do want to prepare you that during these times, as you're doing this journey, it is very important to have a journaling practice, writing, or to be making art, or to have a group that you can talk with, or even a counselor, just people that you can tap into, but most importantly, a connection with yourself and the part of you that's starting to emerge, so that you can integrate it. I hope you integrate it a lot faster than I did. That's my hope. And from here on out, now that we have the call and we're in the disruptive place, we'll start dealing with the beginning of gathering that information and doing something with it. That's the whole point.